Okay, gotta bear with me here because I'm kind of poor and kind of doing what I can with what works here. This is about medical tyranny. I'm a self-activist. This is for educational purposes only, my experience and research. This letter is from 5/14 of this year. I am not licensed in anything. This is for educational purposes only. I am an activist who researches. This is to diminish conspiracy theory medical tyranny. I do my best to cite correctly. If I had not cited correctly, I do not intend to take any credit for any information presented. As my therapist stated to me, I tend to get disorganized when I get triggered with my post-traumatic stress disorder. Medical tyranny. I am an Alaskan Tlingit mother of 3 in Sitka, Alaska. I am currently 32 years old in my second marriage since February 14th, 2011. My oldest son was born in 2003. My second child, a daughter, was born in 2005. My third child was born last year in 2012. This letter is to inform all healthcare workers from federal to state level of the different multiple levels of medical tyranny occurring all around the globe and not just here in Sitka, Alaska. How many different levels of medical tyranny can be considered as medical tyranny? Let's start with the definition of what tyranny means. 1. Cruel and oppressive government or rule. 2. A nation under cruel and oppressive government. 3. Cruel and unfair use of power or control. A young man liberated from the tyranny of his father. Now, this definition of the word tyranny has 3 different definitions to choose from. Let's elaborate on the 3 different definitions of tyranny and how this is happening medically. 1. Cruel and oppressive government or rule. If, living in America, why do we as Americans have a false belief that we have the freedom to choose about what goes in our bodies or not? Our nation is swaying more towards a nation of tyranny on many different levels, including medically. Dr. Russell Blaylock states it is a way to produce a mass loss of health in the United States, and what really concerns me is the fact that they are going to make it mandatory. You are no longer going to be given the choice. They are scheduling up to 150 vaccines before your lifetime is over. So if you are forced to receive 150 vaccines, I can guarantee you a great number of diseases are going to increase astronomically. We are trying to convince the medical profession to stop propaganda because they are absolutely wrong. They are using the media to propaganda us for the vaccine companies and promoting massive vaccination of the public. A nation under cruel and oppressive government. Foundation Medical Director Rima E. Labau, MD, discusses the swine flu. In the eyes of the government of the United States, the word voluntary actually means mandatory for all practical purposes. Don't you think it's strange that Baxter International, the same company that contaminated the seasonal vaccine for flu of 18 countries in Europe, the same 18 countries that Baxter had a contract with, that if they did develop avian flu, then Baxter would be the supplier. That same company, Baxter, was given the lead role in developing the swine flu pandemic, perhaps because they had already filled the patent on the swine flu vaccine way back in 2007. The situation with the states is a great deal more serious. You see, the Constitution of the United States says that any power not specifically given to the federal government is reserved for the states, and the Constitution of the United States makes no mention whatsoever of public health. So, the states have public health responsibility. In 2002, the Model State Emergency Powers Health Acts were proposed to the states of the United States on the request of the federal government. 3. Cruel and unfair use of power or control. For this last definition, I will give the testimony of my own 10-month-old son. My baby boy was born last year. He received his first shot of hepatitis B at 1 hour old after being delivered by C-section. On August 14, 2012, he received the next phase of the mandatory vaccination schedule, Hep B, DTaP, and IPV, now all combined in one shot, called 3-in-1. Hib, pneumococcal, and the Rota. The following day, on August 15, 2012, we had called both the Public Health Office to talk with the nurse to ask them about guidance, and she informed me, the mother, to also call the provider who gave the shots to let them know so they could write it down and could be reported to VAERS. At the time of this, my son's symptoms were nonstop crying and low-grade fever, which would be considered to be a mild reaction. Sometime during the late night, unspecified date and time due to call records, with AT&T only going back 6 months for a call record, I had called the ER of my native hospital to inform them that my son's reaction had gotten worse, that he stopped breathing, had a blank stare, and I gently bounced him up and down, rubbing his chest back and forth to get him out of his limp state physically. Although researching through medical records to do my part to prove medical providers that this happened, my hospital claims to not have that specific phone call around that date. Although they have a record of my husband, the father, calling on August 21st, 2012, when he stated that 7-week-old son is constipated, vomiting, no fever, smiling at times, fussy at times. Now, this phone call to the ER late at night would have occurred, I'm guessing, after the 15th and before the 21st, when he was still having continuing symptoms of receiving that large mass amount of shots. At the time of making my phone call, I remember being very frightened and doing my best not to panic. I remember still bouncing my baby very gently to get him stimulated again. The only sentence I remember hearing from the ER person is, if he is breathing again and seems okay now, you don't need to bring him in. Now, given being in a traumatic situation, the worker also may have stated, you can bring him in if you think you need to. I was too sleepy, couldn't think, too afraid. Why can't my hospital find a record call on the 21st, but not anything between back to the 15th? Who is not doing their job? I am asking these questions because I felt an urgency to request each and every document to prove this moderate reaction phone call I made to the ER. I have the intent of going through each of my child's records to show that with each child vaccinated, the reactions have been getting worse with each child I have. My urgency to provide this letter comes from my son's doctor's dictations notes in the medical evaluation that says I am borderline in my thoughts and that I was delusional on the day of my son's well child check because I was talking about not conspiracy theories like he writes down, but facts. Facts from doctors who try to wake up the mass populace about the real dangers of vaccinations. He wrote down that my husband is passive with regard to decision making. These notes are from April 15th of this year. Now, instead of the doctors having such a closed mind about my researching on the matter and him documenting that we are borderline parents who may possibly be unfit for making decisions for the best interest of our child, could he have in fact brought the matter up to his superior and asked his superior something along the lines of, do we have any current up-to-date information that is opposing of what the CDC tells us? For whoever might be responsible for looking into each and every avenue, instead of trying to write down that I am borderline mother and my husband can't make decisions because I talk about the genocide of American Indians that totaled more than Holocaust victims, is borderline abuse of doing his job. It is unacceptable to write down that I am delusional because I talk about American history. Now, this is not the only first time I am being labeled as this type of patient from my hospital. The medical director had avoided my phone calls from the time I was 20 years old when I moved here to Sitka, trying to ask what had the hospital done when I reported to the state troopers when I was 18 years old what had happened to the doctor that molested me on the exam table when I was in junior high, living in the village where I come from, because I have been wanting to make sure that this pedophile does not have the opportunity to do the same act to any other child. The next traumatic event was when my primary physician was labeling me as a drug seeker, when in fact I ended up with full-blown fibromyalgia that would debilitate my life forever only at the age of 25 years old. The only missing link that I have soon discovered is that I have been living with undiagnosed PTSD ever since I was 3 or 4 years old when my mother passed away. Upon going through my complete medical documents to find the name of this physician that molested me, I have also come to learn and discover that some of the same doctors who treated me so harshly have been treating me ever since I was born, including the medical director's doctor husband that was treating my home village. Both these doctors had retired. When I had numerous meetings with the vice president of my hospital and tried to tell him not only the harsh treatment of ending up with fibromyalgia so young and being labeled as a drug seeker, I tried to ask him about what happened to the doctor I reported. He said it was the first that he had ever heard of the incident. This is somewhere after the birth of my middle child I had spoken to the vice president. My point is, I get nowhere trying to make reports to the medical director or vice president. The labeling and harsh treatment and abuse neglect has been persistent towards me or my baby to date. I know it is a two-way street for patient-physician care. If my baby boy's physician no longer wishes to see my child for how I am pointing out borderline abuse of power for being a doctor, I understand. Doctors need to be careful, just like I do. Where am I? About the heaviness of words he uses and the impact it may have in my own personal life. Example, how it appears by just looking at what he wrote may suggest that I am just out of my head and my husband can't make decisions. Another example, the primary care doctor I had and the beginning full-blown onset of my fibromyalgia, and my doctor said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing else I can do for you." Now, since I was so young and just have blindly been trusting doctors and the medical field of having my best interest in mind, don't you think my doctor would have said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing else I can do for you, but I am going to refer you for a second opinion to see a rheumatoid specialist"? No, that is not what happened, because I had no idea about all the different titles, and not understanding that doctors have bosses to report to, and that person has someone to report to, meaning I learned the hard, slow way between a general physician, specialist, medical director, vice president, president, researcher, etc. In my last revealing of the truth about medical tyranny and how my son's physician writes down about my speaking of conspiracy theories, I would like to inform and reveal to not only his close-minded, delusional, blinded physician who tells my husband when I am not present that he would like to talk to me more about vaccinating my child, that John Rappaport, long-standing vaccine researcher of 15 to 20 years plus, gives public speeches and has written a book about airing the dirty secrets of the vaccine industry. Think about it. If I, as a mother with no title, not being a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, etc., just a mom with PTSD and fibromyalgia, can look up my own stuff on the internet about pros and cons of vaccination, how hard could it be for any healthcare worker working in the facility to take a few minutes to listen to some other doctor or researcher who warns about the dangers and the lies that our government entails? Just like how the government did not succeed in the American Indian genocide, like I was trying to tell my son's doctor. Instead of the doctor asking me, why would the government want to kill children? And me answer his question honestly, why does this doctor then write down that I am delusional when I try to tell him? If none of this is convincing for you, then why would there be a brand new bill introduced, currently waiting to be approved or not? Bill LD 754. The purpose of this bill is to provide greater transparency regarding the ingredients of vaccinations and to reduce confusion related to school immunization requirements and a parent's right to decide against immunizing that parent's child. The bill requires a healthcare provider or clinic staff person, prior to immunizing a person under 18 years of age, disclose the ingredients of the immunizing agent or agents to the parent or guardian of the child. It also requires the healthcare provider or clinic staff person to notify the parent or guardian of the option of refusing immunization of the child based on religious or philosophical beliefs. In closing, I would like to reveal again how I am not in fact delusional or borderline in my thoughts, or my husband not being passive with regard to decision making. Rochelle Garman, a resident of Pennsylvania, is only one in thousands of victims of medical tyranny worldwide, and how medical professionals can manipulate the facts around to make the parent look unfit. All of my citations are Christina England, announcing new transparency bill to disclose vaccine ingredients to parents, retrieved from backtruth.com. Dr. Blaylock Russell, Vaccines and Brain Developments, video 1 of 6 on YouTube, uploaded by Robert McKenzie on July 16, 2011. MD Rima Leibau, USA officials will blackmail citizens to take deadly swine flu vaccination. On YouTube, uploaded by 91177 Info on August 16, 2009. John Rappaport, from No More Fake News, airs dirty secrets of the vaccine industry. YouTube, uploaded by The Health Ranger on March 1st, 2012. Rachel Garman. Doctor calls police CPS on mother who refuses to vaccinate son. Video 1 of 3 on YouTube, uploaded by the Alex Jones channel on January 17th, 2012. Also, Pocket Oxford American Dictionary, 2nd edition, 2008, New York. Thank you for watching my video. If you're having these same issues, good luck to you.